You're watching SuccessSoul Conversations with me, Vicky Paul. I'm an artist, a writer, and an intuitive, and I am passionate about deep transformation and human potential. And I've written a book about soul reconnection called How to Be SuccessSoul, and was inspired to share a series of stories of people who are living successful lives. And that really means reconnecting with who they were born to be and living a life of purpose and meaning. So this is my very first SuccessSoul Conversations, and it's an absolute privilege to have Bernadette Petrie as my first guest. Now, Bernadette is a life coach, a speaker, and a spiritual guide based in the beautiful East Scottish coastal town of North Berwick. She's the founder of the Spiritual Wellness Sanctuary, the Barefoot Sanctuary, and the creator of the Barefoot Talks. Now, Bernadette's life changed 10 years ago when she had a spiritual awakening, and this sparked her own healing journey, and her ambition was to live an authentic life. Since then, she has been writing a blog called Barefoot Ambition, and she has released her first book, Permission to Shine. Welcome to SuccessSoul Conversations.
Oh my God. If I could die having achieved all of the feelings that you described there, I'll be very happy.
It's amazing.
Like a life's work. All of that is a life work. I think for anyone who sees that, that sounds so impressive. And I'm not trying to take away from what those things, because they are real, but I think that it's an evolving process. So,
and I think when you're on a spiritual journey, and I think you can be, because we're sensitive and we're empaths, and sometimes we can be a bit tough on ourselves, and it's difficult for somebody to have your or to sing your praises. You know, we like to be kind of humble in it.
No, I'll take the praise. I'll take the praise.
Well, I think justifiably so. So you're also a writer, and know the value of stories even, and how important they are in our own growth and those round about us. And this is what I wanted to do with this video series, was to really kind of follow the process of my book in a kind of 3-stage, the understanding, the process, and the payoff. So I would love the conversations just to be really organic. And it's about, for me, it's about motivating, connecting, inspiring, and activating anyone who watches this by stories of real people who have found purpose and found meaning in their life. So just to kind of set the scene, I'm just going to set the scene, and then I'd love you just to share, if that's all right. So the first part of the book is called The Understanding, and it really sets the scene and helps us understand why you in particular, Bernadette, lost your way, why you felt disconnected, why there was a lack of direction, or even what the event was that made you sit up, take notice, and decide enough is enough, something needs to change.
Yeah, I think I cover this in my book in depth, I suppose, a lot, but I guess it's, if anyone can relate to this feeling of always just feeling like you're out of sync with yourself, that you wish you could just go back and change that scene, and then, you know, take that bit back and take that bit back. And I think I just felt like a build up of lots and lots of those feelings building up. And I turned 40, which I think for a lot of people, you know, you start to reflect and you look back and you're like, all of this. So I was searching, and you know, I've been raised as a Roman Catholic, and my faith as a little child and even as a teenager had been important to me. But from the age of about 16, I'd lost that really. So I was searching. I know I had children. I was wanting to I was just, who I was asking, who am I? What am I here for? There must be more to life than this. And I went down a course. I've got involved in a business opportunity, and I think at that point, something maybe for women as well, or the feedback in her body is very, it's it's important. And so I probably was at a time when I was probably fitter and healthier than I had been in a lot. So maybe my intuition and my body I felt more connected in some ways to my body. So I wasn't numbing, and I wasn't drinking as much. And so I was starting to just really notice that I would get this really tight feeling when I would not be comfortable in a situation. you know, which was a pattern I'd played out my entire life, you know, sort of not being able to speak up, not be able to say these 3 words. I couldn't say these 3 words. I'm not happy.
Yeah, there's a tremendous pressure on us, particularly now and since the advent of social media, to be happy and what that actually means. But it's a feeling, it's a transitory thing.
Yeah, very much. I mean, it's only part of it, but to admit, to be able to say to somebody, I'm not happy, to me, would have been like someone saying to me, you know, you just have to, it would have been asking me to jump off a cliff, because if I'd admit it, and which is maybe where a lot of people are with their Instagram pictures, they're putting out lots of really glossy images, because if they admit to themselves and to somebody else that they're not happy, they're going to have to do something about it.
Exactly. It's that kind of correlation between stepping up and taking responsibility. And I guess as well, admitting to those in your life that you're not happy. And that then makes you feel, oh my gosh, you're not making me happy. And nobody wants to put that upon friends and family that we love, I guess.
Yeah, you don't want to admit. I mean, I think I had a lot, you know, I do a lot of work with the inner child, because I really believe that it's the inner child that was so afraid of saying I'm not happy, because it just felt like too big a thing to say, because, you know, people might be angry with me if I say I'm not too happy, you know, and all these little, you know, children have such a powerful imagination, so powerful that what we imagine as little children could happen if we say we're not happy is 10 times worse than, you know, the reality. But we live in this imagination, which can be really powerful, obviously, but it can also stifle us. So, you know, I believe that pattern was locked in me from a very young age, from tiny, like a momentary incident, not big things, but then that would be a pattern that would repeat and repeat, and because it kept repeating, I would sort of be in situations that I wasn't happy in, but I would numb or drink my way through it or whatever, and they would just build and build and build. And I guess at 41, I think I was 41, it just kind of like, it just all blew up. So I have a real thing about being able to speak the truth. So when I'm asked a question, I'm not really good at lying. So I'm not. My son's saying, you know, my eyes would do all over this. You'd be able to tell if I was lying. I couldn't. I'd blush or something. But I was asked about why I got involved in a certain business, and they were saying, you know, we just want to know what your why is. Why would you get involved in this? And I remember thinking, God, why did I get involved in it? Because I don't think I'm any good at anything else, or I'm just, you know. And it was just this kind of realization that I was like, I think if I tell you this, it will be, people will be like, Jesus, this woman's about to have a nervous breakdown, which actually was what I was on the verge of doing. So I think finally I couldn't outrun all of those I'm not happy had just built up. So it was like a vomit of emotional vomit of incidentally, I had been bulimic in my 20s, and I found out much later that that's actually stuffing down. So it was like all of that was just kind of. So yeah,
I guess as well that truth catching up with you, eventually catching up with you.
Yeah, you can't outrun yourself. You just can't outrun yourself.
No, you can't outrun yourself. No, you cannot, no matter how hard you try. So what happened when you had that moment, when you decided consciously or unconsciously that now was the time to make the change, now was the time to accept responsibility? What was the kind of immediate and you know, subsequent aftermath of that?
Yeah, well, I guess it kind of blew everything up, because it blew up things with the person I had been sort of working for in their business, and with a view to becoming more involved in it. And it had blown up things at home, and it just blew everything up. And so it took us into a place of truth. So there were a lot of, and also it brought me some home truths, which I wasn't aware of. There was me thinking I'm not a very scary person, and because I'm scared most of the time, but actually when I'm afraid I sound incredibly aggressive. So you know, I was getting some truth bombs being fed back to me from this incredible person who I had, you know, we were obviously, it was like the yin and yang together, and we were clearly meant to have this kind of collision. So that started a process of, it was kind of like, what? I'm aggressive, but I'm actually afraid. So therefore I started, it's something kind of just, it was like this kind of domino effect. I feel like it was like the Matrix button got pushed, and suddenly I was like, oh, this is how this works. And I mean, it's still, it was just like it blew my mind, and my mind just kind of like, I was just having all these ahas, like multiple ahas over a 4-day period, which was incredible, but also incredibly physically draining and incredibly scary for my nearest and dearest, who literally, because I was having a breakdown, which I understand from a spiritual perspective is a breakdown of all the old beliefs about the world, a breakdown of my character story, and an invitation to remember and come home as a spiritual being. So I broke down, but broke through. So
well, it's I guess one could argue, and you might feel different about this, that it happened in a kind of confined space, over a short space of time, because sometimes that awakening, for want of a better expression, can last, for months and sometimes even years. It just depends on your own journey, I guess. So coming through that, and I suppose once you sort of physically recovered from the draining experience, which I suppose takes us on to the process, the step-by-step process that you took to pay attention to what had happened to you, to take responsibility, to step up, to let go, to move forward, to accept that the only route was one of a soulful life.
Yeah, it was, it took actually a year for me to recover physically from that experience.
Wow. Okay.
It had actually probably been a year in the build-up, and then an intense 5-day period. But in the process of stepping into the process and taking responsibility, I realized that I needed to, and I'd already started this, I needed to go back and love and love that little child, and just rediscover what I had loved doing, what I was passionate about, what floated my boat, what made me happy. And we'd been living by the sea now for 5 years, which I think was all part of that process, because I was barefoot a lot. I couldn't be happier living. I mean, being by the sea is like, oh God, I'm looking at it now. It's just, it's so important to my soul to live by water. So I started to really get curious about, what I love doing. And I did a lot of art, and I did a lot of, I was sewing, painting, making teddy bears, and I was like, I was kind of just drawing this flower and filling it in and drawing the flower, and I was sleeping a lot, and I was listening to I sought out spiritual tech. So I found people like Louise Hay. I found people like Donald Walsh, Eckhart Tolle, and Eckhart Tolle's experience really resonated with what I just experienced. So I was like, oh, other people have experienced this too. This is amazing. I was like, so in one area, I was like spiritually so happy. That was really shaky. And I was just gradually discovering when I would get thrown out of the heaven, almost that feeling, I would be like, I'm in heaven, and then it'd be like, oh, I'm not, and I would have to sort of go in and almost go like, hey, what part of me is that? What part of me is, male angry voices? Oh dear goodness, I would just I would become 4. I was so afraid, and I would cry. My reaction if I heard a male angry voice, even as a 41-year-old woman, would be to burst into tears.
Okay.
And that, and I understood, I traced that back and understood that the first time I heard my dad shout at my mum, I burst into tears. Because it didn't get explained and resolved, and you don't understand it as it's healthy for kids to hear their parents shout and make up if it's not a constant thing. But these are what I just became so fascinated in the human psychology and the relationship between the mind and the neural pathways. So I dove into as much as I could. I was convinced, I think I was going to become a psychologist for a while. And then it was like, I don't need to do another degree. I want to talk about God. That's what I want to talk about. So.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about the you know, the moment where you kind of, you enter into that spiritual forum. And I remember it myself, you know, I was at the Arthur Finlay Centre in Stansted, and having that deep connection, and I was like a duck out of water, and that's another story about how I got there. But I remember sitting in the opening evening meditation thinking, oh my God, I don't fit in, this is horrendous, you know, it was just like rejection all over the place. And then we get taken into this beautiful meditation, and I saw in my mind's eye my grandparents, like here. They were so close, and it was the most overwhelming sense of love that I have ever experienced. It was just ridiculous, and I did not want to leave. You know, and it just sparked off a memory then when you said you kind of get spat out, and then you kind of get into the real world, and all you want to do is go back in to that world, you know, and I just want to, for anybody watching, you know, spiritual awakening, for want of a better expression, you know, it's not all fluffy clouds and you know, crystals, the way it's depicted on social media by so many people. It's a really tough, guttural, raw, animalistic, difficult, amazing, you know, experience that it's, when you're on it, there's no choice. But the fear is to leave behind the past. But it's amazing in an instant how quickly you feel connected, you know. So yeah, did you feel that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely. You're always only a moment away from heaven, but you're also only a moment away from hell, and they both result. And it's like, and why we choose to hang out in hell as long as we do, I don't know the answer to that question. You know, recently I had a diagnosis which meant that I've had to deal with a tumor in my right breast, which is now out of my body. But I have to have a second op, which kind of, actually, if it's a tiny op, it brought up stuff, and it kind of made me think, what slither of yuck am I still wanting to hold on to? I mean, they're not going in to take any more cancer out, but it just it's kind of, for me, it felt, what slither of resentment am I determined to hold on? Am I good? And I can only think that we get some benefit, because we get some benefit in being angry at the world, or we get some benefit holding on to resentments from our childhood, because it just, I don't know, sometimes in our little childhood minds, it's that stubbornness, like, I'm going to be unhappy and you'll be unhappy and you'll know I'm unhappy, you know, or something like that. And I was like, wow, God, I'm really having to like have a chat with my teenage self. It's a lot, because the teenage years, I think, for me, is what a lot of this represents. And like, oh, honey, you know, it's like you feel like she's holding this bomb, and you're like, just give it to me, you know, come back. But I think we choose to stay in that state because a part of us is so frightened and doesn't realize that there's a better way. That it doesn't realize that that already a lot of us is in heaven. So that's what we've got to go back. It's like, I always see it as we've got to go and dive into the dark waters and bring another part of us home. So
absolutely,
we'll always be finding. I remember being really inspired by Louise Hay, that you know, she would be interviewing people in her, I think she died in her 90s, but she was doing tapping and stuff, and be like having shifts about other little moments in time that had happened when she was a child. And I thought, wow, you know, it's like we're never going to be done finding another point of us from one little moment in time.
Yeah, and I think you're right in saying it's in time. It's not always in this lifetime.
Oh,
you know, I definitely, I mean, we are spirit beings, soul energy, however you want to resonate with it. You know, this is not the first journey, people. You know, we've been here a few times, you know, and if energy never ends and spirit is forever, then it's a given that you carry some of that history and that baggage with you. And it's manifested itself in my life. You know, we had 3 miscarriages, and I subsequently, you know, just, I'm not able, you know, to have children. It just doesn't seem to work. And it was interesting. I had, way before I discovered this, I always had kind of fertility issues and cysts and that kind of thing, but I had a real issue with the kind of feminine aspect and that imbalance of masculine and feminine. And I had a shamanic past life regression with 3 different people over a period of 4 or 5 different years. And and they all brought up different stories of, you know, losing children, sacrificing children, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So all this history of mother and child has carried its way through into this lifetime until, you know, I've made the breakthrough that I'm meant to make in this lifetime. And that's when painting really came to me. I painted a lot when I was younger, but didn't paint for years. And that's when I started to use painting as healing. And you talked about that yourself, creating. You find yourself in a very creative space. And I felt, you know, for me, it was I couldn't create another human being, but that didn't mean to say I couldn't create and be creative, because that's just bringing and birthing an idea, you know. So it's very much, I think, about dealing with our current life circumstances, but our past life circumstances, which is why, you know, maybe you found yourself in this space again where there's still something there, you know, and you can maybe go a bit digging and see, you know, what am I hanging on to? You know, maybe it's from a previous lifetime, a previous experience. And I just want to wish you great health and great compassion for everything that you're going through. And I wish you the absolute best. You know, you're an amazing soul.
I do feel it's a gift, because it's an invitation to, you know, be happier. Because if it's, you know, anything that's happening in our body is a reflection that we're not truly being honest with ourselves about, you know, our dreams. And so it's like, it's an invitation to dream bigger. It's an invitation to let go of, like, if you see stuff or photographs or you hear a name and you kind of shrink, you're carrying it in your body, you know. So
absolutely,
it's extra cleaning up. And I've always known that ever since even 10 years ago. I knew that I wasn't done. Like, okay, maybe part of me thought I'm done, but you know, that's like the ego that was thought I was done something. And also I realized that when I heal, I feel stuff that's happening around me and outside of me, and I absorb that. So I'm also healing other people's stuff. So it's kind of, you know, not just thinking it's what have I got to dig up from past. It's like, you know, deal with that, but also realize that I'm feeling a lot of people's stuff, and the fact that it's happened at this time is no coincidence. So it's like realizing that, you know, we are the light, and we're here to sort of put that light into the dark space and to transmute it. So I'm sort of just feeling called to step into to, you know, I wouldn't have been able to talk even 8 years ago about and say without any worry of people taking the mick that, you know, I'm a big fan of Jesus, I love God, you know, that person that he was like a rock star to me as a child. I don't have any attachments to any churches, but you know, God, that man, that human being he was my role model. He was like him and Mary Magdalene. I could hang out with them all day, you know. So you know, but you know, and that's kind of, those are the things I would have been afraid of saying years ago, and that's what heals me, when I just allow myself to like be happy about who my idols and rock stars are, you know. And
absolutely, because you're living authentically.
Well, because I'm
what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it's an incredible journey, and you know, I'd like you just to very briefly touch, because we you know each other not well. I was very inspired by a meditation I watched that you did on Facebook Live, and a mutual friend introduced us, and I thought, she's a lady I need to know. We've had some good conversations, but what really inspired me, and what I hope will inspire people that are watching, is to see how much your life can change. And I know that it can change, and I know people understand that it can change like that emotionally. We're all experiencing it with, you know, this pandemic. But I want you to be able to demonstrate the kind of practicalities of that. So I guess this would take us neatly into the payoff, which is exploring that shift, you know. So you've worked through the process, you've taken the time to understand who you are and heal the parts of you that you can heal at that time, because it's a constant healing journey, it's a constant activation, but your soul is activated and you are aligning with your purpose. So how did that make you feel? And then can you just share with everybody what you were doing. And again, you don't need to mention names of business, but I just find it very interesting how different your life is now in terms of what you're offering and how you are using this sort of more aligned you from a business perspective and how you're sharing your gifts. So, because ultimately, the society that we're in, we require money to live. And just because you have spiritual gifts doesn't mean to say they are not valued and validated, and there shouldn't be an energetic exchange between them. So you have your own business. So can you please share what you were doing, to how you decided what you were going to do, and then share with everybody what you do now?
Okay, so I left school with the only ambition was to be a student. That's all I wanted to be. And my husband and I were talking about this last night. It was like, I thought a student would be for life, that's it. I wanted to be a student. So I actually trained in social work, which is very surprising because I didn't know what a social worker was. Honestly, I didn't know what it was, but I wanted desperately to get to college, and I talked my way in, and I wrote it must have been a very creative essay to convince them that I would be a great social worker. And I remember saying these words in my letter: I don't need to put my hand in the fire to know that it's going to burn me. But I realized I do need to put my hand in the fire, because I don't take anybody else's word for it. I have to test it for myself. So, I couldn't, but I was, so anyway, I trained, I became a student, and I was a bit disappointed, to say the least, with some of my student experience. I wanted that big lecture hall with those, that you see in the movies. I never got one of those. I was very annoyed. But I spent 4 years there in placement and out of placement. And it became pretty clear that I probably shouldn't go into social work, because I would, to quote my tutor, he was worried that I had a lot of ambition. Ambition's always been a word that people have thrown at me, and that I might get myself into some situation that I wouldn't be able to handle. So I imagine myself in Nottingham County Council social work department in some scandal of some awful, protection case or something in the newspaper. So I just thought, I know myself, I'm ambitious, I will climb up, I would do that. So I dove into a job in sales and marketing, but I did exactly the same thing there. So I got myself in my late 20s in a senior management role, and really couldn't handle it, because I could handle the sales and all of that, but I wasn't equipped to manage people, particularly people my own age and stuff. And it was just, I was miserable as hell. And it all looked very successful. So I was selling commercial wall coverings, managing a team all around Scotland and Ireland. And I loved the actual creative side, and that's why I'm colour and the artist, that you can imagine doing all that kind of stuff. Loved doing that. But I would feel uncomfortable a lot of the time around some of my colleagues, because it was like I was a child, I was really, it triggered an awful lot of insecurities. So I escaped to become a mum. When I finally became pregnant at 32, I kind of it was like, I just didn't want to go back. But that really, following that, after about a year or so, I really had no sense of identity, and I didn't value being a stay-at-home mum. So other people probably didn't value it around me. And I was kind of at dinner parties, people would go, so what do you do? And you'd be like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm a homemaker, or people weren't interested, and I was like, oh my God. And I loved it. And that's one of the best decisions I ever made, was to walk away from to spend time with my children. But I wasn't doing it because I was 100% confident in that homemaker. It was because I was burnt out. So when the kids were a bit older, I got involved in a creative business that seemed to be perfect, blending all of my skills with the interior world into interest in people. But again, it was, I was chasing somebody else's dream, and it was someone else's vision. So what amazed me when I had the breakdown and breakthrough, that everything that I loved as a child, like drawing and painting and dreaming and visioning and writing and stuff like that, could be things that I could use as what they called a life coach. I just like, what people will pay you to do stuff that's like playing, or to people will pay you to listen to them and to help them see themselves as you see them, because I would see these incredible people coming to me, and I'd be like, wow, you're amazing. I was a kid at school who could look at someone and go, they're going to get 5 A's and 3 B's, and she's going to get whatever. I just knew that people were going to, what they were going to, I could tell if people were going to be where they were going to be. So I guess that you would say it's like a psychic thing, but it's like, so all of those things have just been, every single moment of my life, all of the career stuff, it's all been essential. Because even sales, the social work training, all of those I lean into as a coach today, and creating the sanctuary, all of my experience in the building world and everything, it's been essential. So I wasn't ever off course. It was just, I could have enjoyed it more. You know?
But you know, it had an end point, and there was an out, and there was something special and different and new.
I mean, my husband was saying the other day, he always said that he always believed, he would say, I thought I would have done that by now. You know, I had 1,000 things I wanted to do in my life. And I was like, man, I didn't have any. I was like, be a student. And then I hadn't, that was it. I had nothing. So I actually couldn't see things changing. So I can really relate to people who really feel like nothing will ever change. They'll be stuck forever in this, whether it's friendship, relationship, job. I couldn't see a way out. So
which is incredible when you listen to your story, given all the various points on this story and all the different roles that you've had and all the different jobs and all the different experiences, you know, and hindsight is a beautiful thing, because I think, you know, certainly for me, and I don't know if you'll agree, you know, when you work in, and I guess, I mean, I know you're a life coach, but what kind of, would you call that a spiritual, under the kind of well-being? I don't know if you want to call it the well-being aspect.
Yeah, I mean, really it is. I mean, it is about your connection with God, you know, and I think that's why we're deeply unhappy. Yeah. And I don't mean a religious God, because I think that we got stolen from us and hijacked. So, but just because something doesn't appeal to you, doesn't mean that the real connection is what you're craving, because we're all craving. But I believe that God is deeply inside of me. She's inside of you, and she was there from the moment. So it's just like when we disconnect it from our source of love and encouragement and guidance and everything, it sucks. It feels yuck. So the only difference I have between my life now and my life then is I didn't know that God was in me.
And I guess, you know, and it's like you say, it's a name, it's a label, you know, it's source, one, spirit, soul, nature, you know, all of these things. So I guess I was kind of asking, you know, when you work in the connected industry, you know, it's amazing when you look back at your journey to get to this point, how all the different things connect, you know. So for anybody who's watching this, who is dissatisfied and lost and unhappy and just feels there is something more, the truth is there is, but everything that you're experiencing and everything that you're going through will absolutely be part of the bundle of your new connected career, for want of a better expression.
Yeah, absolutely. When we did the Circle of Light, I do it on a Sunday morning. We did it last Sunday, and it was really powerful. We did a scenario where we time travel back individually. So every 7 years, and we're going back and we're having a conversation with a person of us who we were 7 years previously, and we're telling her, checking in how she's feeling her emotions, but listen, and letting her feel this is who you are. So she gets a glimpse of her future. She remembers where she came from. She can be present and go back into her life and just enjoy the darn thing, and then go back. But then also it's like, now you've got to go back and tell the person 7 years younger from you what I've just told you and the rest. And so it did it. So we went all the way. So suddenly you're like, oh my God, yeah, everyone's just remembering, and you clear the timelines and you clear all those memories, and you get better memories from that time rather than that stuck memory. Because the negativity bias that we have in our brain, we always remember the times when we were miserable.
Yes.
and
that sounds really powerful. Really powerful.
Really fun. So it's on record. People can tune into that on the it'll be up on the YouTube channel in a day or two, but it's on the Facebook Barefoot Sanctuary Facebook page, so people can dive into that.
Perfect, because that was what I was going to kind of sum up, and I could talk to you for hours. I just want to kind of finish before, you know, and I want you to share where people can find out about you and how they can watch what you're doing. Obviously, there's a locale thing. We're all in lockdown, so there's no physical space, but we're all taking that space online. But just to kind of sum up, if you can, in a couple of minutes, and I guess, you know, given you've done that 7 year where you were, talk to your 7 years ago, talk to yourself and back, what would you tell yourself, or what would you tell yourself now with hindsight? You know, if you had the vision, that, you know, if you'd had the benefit of hindsight, what would you have told your younger self, I guess, what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, well, I would say breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Breathe, honey, you know, let's get you out of your head. And, you know, just, I would, you know, it's like, if I could say trust life, I promise you, I'd be like, trust me. It's like the movies you love watching. This is just a part of it. And in order for you to get to the bit that is going to be the end and the glorious bit, you know, this is going to be really good. And I promise you, I'm with you the whole way, and you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. So
love it.
Like, you know, just giving, and that's why meditation is so powerful, because that just gives you a glimpse. Because every time you meditate, if you can not judge yourself just by breathing and thinking of someone you love or a place you love, even doing that for a few minutes and breathing through, you're returning home. Because if you love something, it's because it reminds you of home always. So
I love that.
Right in here. So just giving ourselves those moments, even 2-3 minutes of just checking in and tuning in and, you know, plugging in, and then just open your eyes again and dive back into your life. And also, you know, if you have someone to confide in or journal or something, try not hold those feelings in.
Yeah, get it out
as much as you can. You know, seek out a coach or dear friend, one that you can actually just go, I feel blah blah blah. You know, one where you can be vulnerable with. That is so key. You know, find a place where you can feel vulnerably heard. You know, without someone trying to shut you down and go. You know, because there's certain friends that can. Yeah, or it might be that you don't have friends in a group that can do that, and that's why you need to seek out a coach or something, but or a mentor or an aunt or something. But yeah.
So if people want to find you, work with you, I know you obviously do one-to-one coaching, but you're also taking some of the classes from Barefoot Sanctuary online. So how would people get in touch if they want to work with you, find out more, join in some of your classes?
Sure. Well, at the moment it's really strange times, but I've always done telephone coaching. I love telephone coaching because I had all of my coaching was through the telephone. So I can work with anybody, anywhere on the phone. They're comfortable at home. We would have a quick, maybe we'd send photographs, we'd see a bit of each other, but then it's all on the phone. People can join, if people want to experience working with me for free, they can join in every day on Instagram. I'm reading a chapter on the book. So I'm doing that right now. I'll be going on in 10 minutes.
Hold that back up and let everybody see it, because it's that's on to buy online, isn't it?
This is available on Waterstones, Amazon, Barnes Noble.
Love it.
Permission to it is going to be a year old this month coming up, so yeah, it's so exciting.
Congratulations.
And so these are the cards that go with the book that I pull from these every day on the Instagram. So I'll just pull the first one out to let you see. And this was, we were talking about, you know, this is the kind of thing I did as a kid, and here I am, you know, and these resonate with people everywhere. So this says, you are worthy of the life you dream of. So
love it.
That leaves everybody with a good thought. You're worthy of the
absolutely does.
So, and also people can book into, there were retreats that we had, like a retreat coming up that we've had to postpone, but I am looking at, just spilled coffee all over me. That's good. I am looking
it's live, people. It really is live.
There we go, coffee all over. But one of my ambitions has been to create what I call Barefoot School, which will be an online schooling program to help people to go through the steps that I done, and I'll be taking the steps too of literally getting bare feet and reconnecting with your child. So that's something that's coming up. So if people want to just sign up to the newsletter, go to www.barefootambitition.co.uk, get on my mailing list, and that way whatever ideas are sparked through this time, you'll be the first to know.
Fabulous. And I will put links to absolutely everything, and we're going to post this on YouTube and onto Facebook, so there'll be links for anybody who's watching who wants to connect with Bernadette. And I have done one of her meditations and it was amazing. So thank you so much for being my first guest. You are just such a beautiful soul, and I thank you for taking the time out of your day to share some of your story with us.
Well, thank you so much, Vicky. I have to say, if I'd had your book 10 years ago.
Yes, come on. I should maybe give myself a plug. My book is called How to Be SuccesSoul, and it's a guide to reconnecting with your soul. And it's been, we're still working on a date, but I think it's going to be the end of the summer into early autumn, because it was due out in May, but we've had to shove it back. So I will also put more information in the comments below. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll be sharing a series of these over the coming weeks and months. So please feel free to share on Facebook or YouTube. Make sure you subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and tell everyone about Bernadette Petrie. Much love. Take care. Bye-bye.